All right, I want you on page 25 in your Understanding Word Problem packet. You should have glued a problem from that relates to the book A Chip Off the Old Block, and we labeled it number 25. You should glue that on page 25. You're also going to need the map that you have colored and labeled and glued some things onto, because we will reference this in order to get some of these distances, because that's what all three of these math problems that we'll do over the next couple of days relate to. All right. Question number 25 says, what was the difference between the trip from Half Dome to the Wave and the trip from Dino to Rushmore? So this isn't necessarily one that we can automatically jump to filling this section out until we really kind of think about what this question is asking us, because it's one sentence and it's a question. We're not going to just take everything that's in this story problem or in this word problem and write it here, because that doesn't help us like pull out the information that we need to know or need to find out. So in this particular problem, when it's kind of limited, it really means that we need to be, making some inferences and understanding what's being asked of us. So a lot of times kids would go, oh, I see the word difference. This means I'm going to subtract. But if we take a look down at this action, subtraction is, this symbol to subtract, it could mean that we're separating or we comparing. You got to know which one we're doing, because that will guide us into knowing what we're going to separate from. And it also helps us have a deeper understanding of the problem. So actually, when I see this word difference, I also see difference between. I want that underlined. That's it. Difference between. This right here, like if I'm telling you the difference between something like, what's the difference between your bedroom and my bedroom? Or what's the difference between the length of your hair and my hair? That means I'm comparing something. So when I see these kinds of words like this, I know that I'm comparing. Now I got to look and see, what am I comparing? Because I actually see lots of destinations here, right? Rocky went to Half Dome, he went to the Wave, he went to Dino, and he went to Rushmore. Am I comparing all four of those? Am I going to need all four of those numbers? Like the distance between those? Well, let's take a deeper look here. So what was the difference between the trip from Half Dome to the Wave and the trip from Dino to Rushmore? So it looks like to me, I'm seeing this word trip and trip. I'm going to be comparing trips. Okay, so this will be trip A, maybe, okay, which is Half Dome to the Wave. And then we have our second trip, or trip B. So we're comparing what the distance was between trip A and trip B. Okay. That's what we want to find out, the difference between the two trips. So now, as far as what do we already know? So we know that the first trip is going to be from Half Dome to the Wave. So let's say Half Dome to Wave was, let's take a look at our map. Here's Half Dome and the Wave, and it looks, we labeled it 595 miles. And then we want Dino to Rushmore. Let's look at our map. Here's Dino in Texas, and we're going all the way to South Dakota. We have 1,117 miles. So now that we even have the numbers, we can see that we have a distance that is longer, we have a distance that is shorter, longer, shorter. Those are words because they end in the suffix er. So we know that that suffix makes a word be like a descriptive word or a comparative word. So we're comparing these distances. So here's a way that we can represent them using a box model, or a bar model, I should say, sorry. I like to start with the longer one on top. So here I have, I'm going to just make that a quick reference and say D to R is 1,117 miles. And then half dome, so HD to W, I'm not going to make my box as long as this because it's shorter, right? So I'll say 595 miles. And this right here, this is our unknown. This is going to be the difference between the distances, right? So I'm comparing one trip, the length of one trip, to the length of the other trip. And the way that I'm going to do that is by saying, like, when I compare these, obviously I see that I'm going to subtract. Then I'll be able to say, you know, how much longer Dino to Rushmore is, or how much shorter Half Dome to Wave is. So we are not going to be joining or combining. We're not joining equal groups, and we're not splitting equal groups. We're also not separating. We're going to be comparing. So this is the one we're going to be doing. And here's how we can explain that. So I want us to use that terminology, comparing, so we can say this problem is comparing the distance of two trips. We could say the trip from Half Dome, and I'm going to abbreviate it just because we know that that's what that means. To the Wave, or the W, is shorter than the trip from, I should say, from Dino to Rushmore. And I'm abbreviating that. Subtract the shorter trip from the longer one, right? From the longer. And then we come full circle all the way back up to what we're trying to find out. So this will answer the difference between the trips. Alrighty. So that is problem number 25. It's a comparing problem, and we're comparing the distance between one trip and another trip. One of them's longer, one of them's shorter. We want to find out what that difference is. Okay.